The more accurate question is, what is your priority right now? I've become a lot better at protecting my time. When you say yes to something, you are effectively saying no to something else.
Welcome to the Solo2CEO Podcast. We're sitting here with Michal Eisikowitz, who is a copywriter, right? Is that what it's called? So tell me a little bit what you do in your jargon.
So I'm going to stay away from jargon because that's part of what copywriters do. I run a micro agency, a copywriting agency. We specialize in copywriting for B2B businesses, mostly tech. And I also, my other side of the business is Copy Tribe. It's a academy for copywriters and business owners who want to learn how to write copy. So training programs and products for people who are writing copy or wanting to learn it.
Is this something useful for service professionals as well?
Yeah, we've had service providers actually take my foundational copywriting program because they wanted to be able to, learn how to write copy for their own businesses, whether that's their website, emails, even like WhatsApp ads. And we've also had people take my program because they wanted to be able to effectively guide copywriters. Like, it's very hard to hire a freelancer and have a good outcome when you don't really know how to direct them. And you're not sure what's great copy and what's terrible copy, and you don't know the difference yourself. So by learning the basics, like the fundamentals of copywriting, you're in a better position to, number one, hire someone better, and number two, direct them better. So my core target are strong writers looking to become copywriters who want to build either freelance copywriting businesses or become in-house copywriters. And on the side, I have a business owner track, and I also have a track for designers who want to learn how to be able to write copy or effectively collaborate with copywriters.
So what exactly do they learn? You were saying something about WhatsApp, and they learn how to write things in general, or they also learn more in-depth skills?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, when it comes to businesses, everything starts with writing. Sending an email to someone, you have to write it. You're crafting an ad, you have to write it. Any marketing asset starts with writing. So it's a very, very fundamental skill for any business owner. And the goal is to, number one, teach them the foundations of copywriting and then actually review the copywriting work they've done and give them that personal feedback.
It's interactive.
Yeah, it's a live mentorship program. And I do that very intentionally because my experience has been that without the accountability and the personal feedback, one-to-one, people tend not to complete courses and they just kind of fizzle out and they don't get value from them.
People buy it. I think they call it chasing shiny objects.
Yeah.
Like they'll buy into a course, and then as soon as it gets to the point where they actually have to put in the work, they're out to lunch.
And it's
and they're
funny.
on to the next shiny object.
And we all do this like again and again. I call it like collecting dust in your drive, like becoming digital dust bunnies. That's what these courses are. Yeah. And like we go into it with the best of intentions, but the fact is that we humans desperately need accountability and deadlines. And without it, we just don't follow through.
Right. I saw today someone called it shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
Which I noticed actually is acronym SOS.
Yeah.
It's like, save me.
Right. It's like, if I just get this course or program, everything will turn out right in my business and all the problems will go away.
And then they get it and they ditch it like a few days later.
Yeah. So, at the end of the day, it's all about execution. And you can have the best course in the world, but if you don't follow through and do the work, it's not going to change anything in your business.
Exactly. So what you do in this course is you actually help them with the implementation. Yeah.
They have to do the work and they can't get the badge. We have like a certificate until they do that. And for the business owners, they're very motivated because they're writing their own assets and they have this opportunity to get them critiqued by expert copywriters. So for them, they're very motivated. And for the copywriters taking the program, they also are motivated because they want that shiny badge.
So let's take a few steps back. How'd you get into all of this?
Great question. So I was actually pursuing a master's degree in speech language pathology. This was in Israel. I had just gotten married, moved to Israel. I had finished my BA in the States, and I was pursuing my master's through an online program here in Israel. And I wanted a job on the side. I didn't have kids yet. And I, through a family friend, landed this random marketing intern position at a publishing company. And that's where I discovered that A, I absolutely love writing, and B, I can get paid to write. That was like a big revelation to me. So I wrote all kinds of things like product descriptions for books and the back flaps of books. You know, when you buy a book, you read the back flap.
Yeah.
I wrote magazine articles about books, catalog descriptions, just all the marketing writing for this publishing company, and I loved it. And I realized that I don't want to give this up. So even after I had finished my degree and I started working as a speech therapist, I was freelancing. I was moonlighting as a freelance writer the entire time. So I started writing for magazines, a lot, mostly for Mishpacha magazine for many years. I loved it. It doesn't pay well at all. It's very gratifying and the team there is amazing. But when you're looking to earn more substantially, there isn't that much room for growth.
Right.
And so that's when I started doing more freelance copywriting. And I realized like, wow, very similar skills. And it just pays a lot better because it's a business investment. Like business owners see the results. They see the outcome of good copy. And so they're really willing to pay for it. So I worked in-house as a copywriter for many years for the Anellis Group. I don't know if you've heard of them.
So let's pause a second. So you jumped ship from Mishpacha because you wanted to go the freelancer route, right? You wanted to be growth oriented and you didn't see growth there. So you jumped off of that train. And then you went ahead and you started as a freelancer and then you became an in-house. So you're a freelancer in-house at this company.
So I wouldn't call it jumping ship because it happened very gradually. So at one point I was literally working 2 days a week as a speech therapist and 2 days a week for Mishpacha and 1 day a week as a freelance copywriter. So I was just kind of all over the place. And I called it scattered brain syndrome, right? Like I was like doing 3 different things and mastering none of them. And so that's when I slowly started transitioning out of speech therapy and magazine writing. And it happened over time, but I was working like part-time as an in-house copywriter while writing some magazine articles at the same time. So the whole thing happened, the shift happened slowly.
So what was the reason you stopped doing the speech therapy?
Well, I realized that something had to go because I couldn't be doing 3 different things. And for me, I just saw much more of a growth potential in the writing field. And I also felt like given my strengths and talents, it was a much better fit. Like I was a pretty good speech therapist, I think. You know, the parents liked me, the kids liked me, but I felt like a million other people could be good speech therapists. So I just felt like writing was a much better fit for my unique skill set and strengths. And it was a place where I could really shine and had a lot more potential. So I started moving that direction. And then one summer I decided, okay, so this was like the turning point. I decided to take this copywriting training program. It was really more of like a business training program for copywriters, how to build a freelance business. Because until then I was just doing like anything that I thought made sense. I was really just winging it. And I took this 3-month training program. It was like $1,200, which felt like a crazy sum of money to me at the time. And after I took this program, it was such a great course that I said, you know what, I'm going to take the risk, say goodbye to my speech therapy job for this year as an experiment, and just go all in on the freelance copywriting thing. So that was really where I made that decision. Like I had been slowly cutting down on it over the years, and that year I said, I'm taking a break from the speech therapy thing, and I did it. And it was an amazing experiment. I viewed it as an experiment, which kind of made it less risky. And I realized that that's a privilege to be able to experiment like that.
Where were you in your life at that point? You were married?
I was married. I had 4 little kids.
So you had a lot of bills to pay, and you were just.
I had a lot of bills to pay, but more than that, I just felt like I was all over the place. And also, even from a flexibility perspective, like the speech therapy I found very draining, like having to get out of the house with all my nursing paraphernalia at like 7:30 in the morning and having to rush home and the babysitter drop-offs. And I realized that the writing provided a much more flexible option for that stage of my life. So that was another factor. And I think I was also just tired. Like I felt like I was giving a lot more value than 10 cents a word. And as much as like I got such great feedback on my articles, I was just ready to earn more.
Also, scalability is much more challenging when you're doing like this, one-on-one, which is a lot about what we talk about over here is how someone can go from being the service professional, that one-on-one feel, and actually multiply that.
Yeah.
So I imagine with speech therapy, it could be something really challenging, especially if you're the expert.
Yeah.
Then how do you then bring in someone else, and who's going to want to go to them? And it brings its own challenges. But I guess with writing, it's also the same idea. You need to train someone in to do it as well as you in order to really scale that.
Absolutely, and that's where voice guides and brand guides can really come in handy. like setting standards for what does the voice look like, sound like, what are examples of our brand voice, what is a bad example, what's not our brand voice. Because if you're going to hire a team of writers, then they need to be on the same page and not just like with a feeling, but there have to be some concrete guidelines.
Right. So how big is your team right now?
I have 5 people working for me.
Do they work all remotely, or they're working all in-house?
All remotely.
Oh, cool. So you get to work from home.
Yeah, I do. I have an office overlooking the park. It's really nice.
That's awesome and awful at the same time, isn't it?
You know, it's funny. I got so used to it. It's funny because I always joke with my husband, like, I never thought I would become that stereotypical freelancer who stays in pajamas until like 11 a.m.
Yeah.
Like, because they have no reason to get dressed. But like some days I just find myself like so consumed with work. And it's so interesting that like comes 12 o'clock and I'm like, pull yourself together, Michal. But it's really amazing. I personally enjoy it a lot. I do try to make time for like social outings and get-togethers because I need people too.
So how do you structure your day? So you kind of just segued into that, the social outings. How do you structure your day? Obviously leaving time and creating time for both family and also social outings that might include friends that are not family.
Yeah, great question. So my sacred hours are like 8 to 11. That's when my mind is sharpest and when I can really accomplish deep work without people bothering me. So those are like what I call my swallow the frog hours, like the 2 biggest tasks that I've been like procrastinating or like that feel very daunting. Try to tackle those in the first 3 hours of the day. And the tasks that require the most brain power in general in the morning. So I'd say like from 8 to 11 is like deep work. 11 to 1 is more like reviewing things my team has created, giving feedback. Lunch break, and then like 2 to 3:30 I try to have meetings then, as you can see like now.
Yeah.
My mind is still pretty sharp, I think, but just not as focused as it is in the morning. Yeah. So I like to save my meetings for then, and then I also do meetings in the evening because I have clients mostly in the States. So that's another good thing. And I think everyone should do that. Like, I don't think anyone should waste, if you're a morning person, don't waste your morning brain power on meetings.
It's a challenge for me because it's important for me to study religious studies, and that's also something I need to do when my brain is sharpest.
Right.
So I'm balancing like hanging out with people, hanging out with family, doing social things and creating time for hobbies. I don't need my brain sharp for that. So that could all be in the evening, the afternoon, evening. But balancing the Torah study along with working. Those morning hours are, everyone's fighting for that, time. And
it's also, I think, a reflection of your priorities. Like what you do first in the day also just sets the tone for your whole day.
Right. Well, I would say they're both priorities to me. But it's true that when they say choose your priorities, if you wrote more than one thing down on the paper, none of them are priorities.
Right.
Priority means one thing, technically.
Right.
Otherwise, my priorities are, my kids, my livelihood, my study, they write a whole long list. Right. I'm like, no, but what's your priority? Which one?
I guess the more accurate question is, what is your priority right now? Because the fact is they really are all priorities.
Right. It's hard to choose. And a few years ago when I was dating and my mentors or whatever in that area were saying like, okay, you have to make this a priority. I'm like, okay, well, I also have my job right now that I'll get fired if I don't make that a priority. Right. Torah study is extremely important to me. And I also I'm building up this side hustle. That's also a huge priority to me. And I don't remember what else, but I think there was something else that was also, I'm like, I can't let any of these fall to the side. So, but what are actually your thoughts? If someone told you that they were facing this challenge, what would you say to them?
So I've become a lot better at protecting my time over the years. And I keep trying to remind myself that time is the most precious thing I have, more than money. Money, I can always earn more. Time, I can't get back. So I've become a lot more of a regular no-sayer. I've learned to say no to more things, whether that's an opportunity for an interview, for a speech, for a collaboration, whether it's an email, really trying to choose what I want to spend my time and brain space on.
Also, if you can't say no to anyone, you haven't ever said yes to anyone.
Right. Your yes is that much more meaningful when you have said no to others. The fact is, like, in a finite world, when you say yes to something, you are effectively saying no to something else. whether that no is your family or your Torah
yourself.
study or yourself or your health. So that's like the reframe that I try to tell myself. Well, like, because I'm a people pleaser by nature. I like saying yes to people, and so but the fact is that yes is a no to something else. So the question is, what do you want to be saying yes to?
Right, because life is about choices. You can't have everything.
Yeah, right, and that's a big myth. Like, I try to be very real with the people who take my program, and I have a lot of religious women taking my program. Women who have large families. And I try to be real with them that, like, I don't believe that a woman juggling 4 or 5 kids can achieve the same financial success as a man in the same situation, or a woman without those kinds of obligations. I don't. Can't have individual people done it because they are unusually ambitious or unusually talented? Yes. But, like, by and large, are the outcomes going to be the same? Absolutely not. There's like a limited number of hours in the day, and it's important to just tell yourself, like, what do I want out of this? Like, given the fact that I value my kids, I prioritize my family, so what do I want what are my financial goals? What are my work goals? What are work goals that are realistic for my current stage of life, and work towards that? And when you achieve that, that's a win. You know, and to start, like, comparing yourself and measuring yourself up to people whose life circumstances are entirely different is super counterproductive.
Right. And it's only damaging.
Mm.
It creates false hopes, and you're like, okay, I'm going to be at this place at this and this, at this and this date.
Yeah.
And you're not anywhere near there. You know, you're like 3/4 of the way, of the way there to that date, and you're not even anywhere near there, and it creates disappointment.
Yeah. And I once heard a great quote from a friend of mine, Edin Badani. She said, the best things in life aren't really scalable. Like, in my effort to protect my time, I've tried to become, like, much more efficient, right? And to do only things that are more scalable. But when you think about it, like, bedtime with your 4-year-old is not scalable. And neither is quality time with your spouse. And neither is Torah study for yourself.
Right.
So those are very, very important things that have eternal value, and they're not easily scalable. So sometimes when you get into this mindset of, like, always being so efficient all the time, you have to take a step back and realize that in certain areas of your life, you don't want to be efficient, because it's just about being and being present and in the moment. Right.
Well, I guess you need to compartmentalize.
Yeah.
Because there are certain areas in life where you need to be focusing on scaling it.
Right.
And building systems to have that scale itself.
Absolutely.
But it's more the personal things in life. Those aren't scalable.
Yeah.
Things that are related to personal growth and personal relationships, you can't scale a relationship.
Right.
Like, hire a team to, like, maximize that relationship for you.
Right.
It's like, you need to make that coffee yourself.
Right.
If it's going to mean anything.
Oh, you can be more efficient. Like, people make fun of me for this, but at one point in our marriage, my husband and I were using Basecamp for, like, super technical stuff. Like, we were busy with construction at the time, and we had a lot of, like, technical stuff, and we're both, like, very tech people. Basecamp is a project management tool. We were, like, assigning each other tasks with deadlines in Basecamp, and so people kind of made fun, like, everyone else does it with WhatsApp or whatever, but, like, we were trying to be more efficient in that way. So I guess what I'm saying is, like you said, like, certain parts of your personal life you can become more efficient in.
That's interesting.
But the relationship piece, not.
Well, yeah, I mean, spending quality time, like, these kind of things, you can't systemize.
Right.
Not really.
One example, by the way, that, like, you just reminded me of, I needed to decide whether to work with a certain client recently, and I was debating because this person was not really my target client, and I discussed it with someone, and he said, "Listen, is this going to take you somewhere? Like, is this going to move your business forward when you're finished with this engagement? Are you going to get more referrals from the clients you really want to work with? Is it going to enable you to create a digital product of some sort that you can then sell at scale?" And I realized, like, no, this was a dead end project. I would do a great job for the client, and that was it. And that's what helped me get the clarity to say no and turn down the opportunity, because I was looking with that perspective of, like, is this going to help grow the business in some way?
So what advice would you give someone that is faced with a client, such a client who, you know you're not going to be advancing the business with this client, but you're in a position where you kind of need the revenue right now.
Right. So if it's like a cash flow issue, then you keep them. But I feel like if 90% of your clients are helping you deal with the cash flow, then that's not a great situation to be in. Like ideally, you would want to have a smaller percentage, 10 to 20, let's say, and you just keep them to have that security, and everyone else is really more of like looking forward.
I'm taking a bit of a jump over here because I want to drive the car back to the copywriting lane. So what are some mistakes that you typically see people making, let's say on their website, copywriting wise, and you probably see it and you're like cringing. You're like, if they would just change these 2 words, they'd get a much higher conversion. So what are some typical mistakes you see people doing?
So number one, they try to sound fancy. Now there's something called jargon, which is the terms that your target audience uses, right? So if you were marketing to a bunch of videographers like you would want to use the verbiage that videographers are used to. So maybe those are fancy tools that I don't know, but that's fine because your target does. So jargon is not necessarily bad, but it has to be serving a purpose. There's no value to sounding fancy for the sake of sounding fancy. It just complicates things. And that's the fundamental principle, is that humans are wired to conserve calories. We want to not have to think so hard. So if you write a complicated sentence that is just taking me too long to absorb, you've lost me. I want it simple. So the goal of the business owner is to write copy that speaks to his target in the most simple, fewest words possible. And they're like, here's an example, utilize. There is no value in using the word utilize instead of use. Use is much simpler, faster, easier. Why do people use the word utilize? They think it makes them sound more knowledgeable.
Why do people utilize the word utilize and use the word use?
There you go, right? I have to think of another example. I can't think of one right now, but there are these common words where like people just use them to sound
sophisticated.
Sophisticated. But what it does is it just complicates things for your reader and makes them more likely to tune out.
Right. And what would you say is a good structure, right? So you have the website, and let's say there's like the big headline and then like a small sub headline. First of all, in your jargon, what do you call this? Is that what it's called, the headline and the subheading?
Yeah, so that section, that main section of the website that's above the fold of the screen when you hit the homepage, we call that the hero section because it's like the hero of your website. It's what makes or breaks the experience. So it's what makes people decide whether they want to continue scrolling or they want to click away.
Basically right below the menu.
Exactly. So generally there's what we call the hero headline, those big few words, and then a hero subhead, like a smaller sentence just afterwards that elaborates a little bit on the hero headline, gives a little bit more detail and clarity. And then you have a call to action, usually some kind of button. Call us, book a consult, right? So those are typically the elements of the hero section rather. One fabulous tip when you want to think about how you can decomplicate your message is think, how would I explain what I do to my grandmother or even to my mother for that matter?
Or your 6-year-old.
Right, or your 6-year-old. Or the guy in shul who's like completely not part of your work circle and is not familiar with your industry. And the way you would explain it to them in that sentence, like literally take that sentence and consider using it as the hero headline of your website.
Right. Yeah, so for me it would be, I make videos that help service businesses win clients.
Nice. I like that.
I worked on
So
it.
what you just did is you communicated the end benefit, the ultimate outcome that you help your clients achieve. Win more clients,
right,
which is fantastic. One thing you may want to consider, though, is if your target client is actively in the market for a video person and is comparing you against competitors, you may want also in that hero section to communicate what makes your videos different.
Right. That would be the subheading.
So sometimes it's in the subhead, but sometimes if you know that your prospect is highly aware, you may want to actually put that in the
actual heading.
Main header. Yeah.
Interesting. So, and what would you say is the sweet spot in terms of word count when it comes to the heading and the subhead of your website?
So for the header, the shorter the better. Like I'd say
Does that
anywhere
rhyme on
between 3 to 7 words. What?
So does that rhyme on purpose?
The shorter the better?
With the header, the shorter the better.
Oh, I didn't even think of
that.
that.
You could be a rapper.
There you go.
That's great.
Thank you. Yeah. Something to add to my training. So 3 to 7 words.
3 to 7 words.
Yeah. I have seen 2, but it generally doesn't say much. And then the subhead, you can go a little longer. I'm going to say 6 to 12 words.
Interesting. That's more than I thought.
So the 12 words, like if you're going to go with 12, you may want to like create like a short bullet list. In other words, break it up visually a little bit so it's easier to consume. And that's another really fundamental thing that every business owner should know, that especially when you're writing for the web, you got to lay out the copy in consumable chunks. So anytime my eye sees like a block of text on the web, like that's it. I scroll down. Like it's too annoying to people. It has to be really broken up visually so that my eye stays engaged and that it's easy for me to read.
What I've seen and what I think is very successful is, but I want to hear your thoughts on it, but like you'll be scrolling through and every block of text, like small blocks of text, will have 3 big words that pretty much summarize that whole block. Mm-hmm. So sometimes when you're scrolling through, you'll just be looking at the big words and you'll get the picture. Exactly. And then when you see pictures, when you see a few words that catch your eye, then you read in that area. You read whatever paragraph is under that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you talk about websites, so there are like 3 different readers when it comes to websites. There are the guys who just skim. That's it. That's all they do. Like they're never going to read all your body copy. So you got to make sure that your headlines are really fantastic. And then there are the ones who will read every single syllable on the page. And then there are the people in between. So you want to be conscious of all 3 of those personas when writing your copy.
I'm the guy in between.
In between.
Yeah.
So then that's why your headers are so important, because when your header speaks to me, I will go ahead and read the rest of the copy in that section.
It's like the hook.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why you need to have a lot of headers altogether. Sometimes you'll see websites where there's no hierarchy. Like there's just a lot of text on the page, but my eye doesn't know what's really important and what's less important and what's the main topic and what's the detail. So the visual hierarchy of like telling me where to read first and what to skim in what order, that's also very important. And that's where design and copy really overlap.
I want to hear a little bit about how the journey was when you realized it was time for you to scale. What was the first position you hired?
I hired a copywriter who doubled as a project manager.
What triggered the need to hire someone in the moment?
Well, at some point I realized I was getting a lot of work and a lot of projects. And I realized that if I wanted to scale past a certain number, I needed to expand my team or change my whole business model to offer only digital products. And I wasn't quite ready to do that. I wanted to continue providing copywriting services. The only way for me to more effectively do that was with a team. I also found myself doing a lot of tasks that didn't really require me. So there's a lot of project management that happens, especially with big, complicated marketing projects. And the copywriter doesn't have to be the one doing that. So I realized that I could more effectively use my time and write more copy for more clients if I had someone to support me with that.
Awesome. So the first person you hired was a copywriter / project manager.
Right. Like she had really good copy skills. She was actually in the first cohort of my training program. So I had an up close look at her skills and I knew she would write well. And I also knew she was super organized, detail oriented. And so she was happy to do some project management too.
And she'd been through your training program, so
right.
She knows your style.
So actually all 5 of my team members have been through my program. What I didn't realize when I launched this program was that it would be an amazing talent pool for me and the other more experienced copywriters involved in it, because you really get to see people's skills up close, and you also get to see how they interact with others in the group and the community. And I really feel like I have a team of superstars, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to have seen them in this program.
So it's advantageous for really anyone that wants to scale to actually have a digital product like a course alongside their business model, because then if they want to hire, they can use that to sort of filter out the good talent.
Well, yes, but it has to be a profitable program. Like, you can't just be doing the program in order to hire well, because
of course
running the program is like, it's a huge deal. Like,
Yep,
doing it well.
We're gonna get to that in a couple minutes, because I want to open that up big time. So the first person you hired was a project manager / copywriter, and how was it having someone that you now trust to do the copywriting? Did every single bit of copy have to go through you?
So it still does. I still give my final approval on any piece of copy that comes out of our agency, which may change, and I'm hoping will change over the years, like as we grow, because I sometimes become a bottleneck in that way. But my team has become so good at writing copy, and we've also become really good at writing detailed briefs that give each writer the information they need to write well, so that my final review doesn't usually include a lot of changes or edits. It's just me giving that stamp of approval.
It's got to be a good feeling when you don't have to like change anything. You look at it and you're like, oh, you guys are on point. Perfect.
Yes. I have one writer, I'll give her a shout out, Shiffy Abramoff. She's awesome. Shiffy has become so good at nailing my voice. She writes a lot of the sales emails for my programs, which are coming from me, right? They're signed off by me. So I'm usually the one who gives her like the ideas of what I want to say, and then she crafts it into this amazing email.
And you stamp it.
Right. And she's become, and I usually edit it also because it's my voice and it's like literally me. But she has become so good. Like, she'll tell me, here are two options. I think this one is more your voice. And she's almost always on the mark. So it's really a talent to be able to capture a writer's voice and be able to weave that through consistently.
And I imagine she's also able to do that for your clients as well, to really, clone their voice and put that into writing.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier said than done, and it's also more important when you have a personal brand where like somebody is the face of the brand. So then it becomes even more important, because then it's super jarring when you get messaging from them that doesn't align with their typical voice. If it's more of like a company brand, you usually have a little bit more wiggle room for error.
I've noticed you've been very active on LinkedIn. So how do you use LinkedIn to generate business?
Yeah. So it actually evolved over the years. LinkedIn completely exploded my business. Like, I am a huge believer in LinkedIn, because when I started on LinkedIn about 5 years ago, that was my main lead gen strategy. I just went ahead and created at least 2 to 3 pieces of content a week to post on LinkedIn. I engaged a lot with people on LinkedIn. I worked on building my network, having conversations with people, commenting on other people's posts. And that was it. Like, I would say 80% of my initial clients were from LinkedIn. And then, you have referrals, recommendations, word of mouth from the existing clients. But it was the overwhelming source of leads.
So the main things that you were doing were posting and commenting on other people's.
Yeah.
And then the leads were just pouring in.
Posting helpful, interesting content related to copywriting and marketing. Stuff that people could actually use and implement in their business.
And do you use any other platforms to promote yourself or to get this content out?
Not really.
Just LinkedIn.
I have my own email list by now, which is nice size, but no. I was weary of spreading myself too thin at the time. And I'm in general, like, I'm the kind of person who I'm like, let me choose something and go all in. And I did. And I found that anyway, for my target client, which is B2B tech, that's where they hang out. They're not on Facebook. They're not on Instagram, which works out well because I hate Instagram.
Let's get that on record.
A little too much pretension for my taste, although I don't know if pretension is a word, but I think we all understand what we mean.
So there's a lot of value that you share. So through LinkedIn, as you just mentioned, and through your course, right, which it's a paid course, but you're sharing a lot of value. You're sharing a lot of the things that you've learned in your career, some things you probably learned the hard way as well.
Absolutely.
And you're sharing it for them, the easy way. Are you not afraid of creating competition for yourself?
Not at all. I mean,
I love
the
that
number
answer.
of businesses in the United States alone is in the tens of millions. And I'd say, if I had to guess, 70% of businesses have hired a copywriter or regularly hire copywriters, which means the opportunity in the United States alone is insane. And therefore, as long as you're willing to get out there and leverage your network, there's just so much opportunity. And it's all about finding your sweet spot of like who you want to serve and who needs you and where your voice really shines.
Yeah, so it's because you have a business that's not limited to a specific community, and you're really able to service anyone that is an Anglo business.
Right.
So there's really no competition. There are so many people that need your service.
Yep.
So you're not afraid to.
I've worked with clients in England, in Bulgaria, in Malaysia, in Australia, South Africa. So it's for a copywriter working in English, the opportunities really are
right.
massive.
Right. So how did you go about building this course? First of all, what triggered it? Let's start with that.
What triggered it was the feeling of I learned like so many things in this hodgepodge, hard way manner. Like I just kind of fumbled my way through my first 5 years of copywriting, trying to learn from that resource and looking at those blog posts online. And I felt like there was no course from start to finish that could prepare a beginning copywriter and give that solid, clear foundation without overwhelming you. Because, you know, Google, you can get anything on Google today, but you can also not stop getting anything on Google. Like you can just sit on Google for the next 6 months. There's that much content. So like, what do you really need as a beginning copywriter? What are the absolute fundamentals? And then you can go ahead and actually start doing the work and getting paid. So that's what I felt I had been missing. And I said, like, I want to create this opportunity for new copywriters. I'm also very passionate as a Jewish Orthodox woman. I felt very passionate about giving this opportunity specifically to women like me who really need flexibility. And they often have very, very outstanding writing talent, which they're getting paid peanuts for writing for magazines. And again, I think the magazines are wonderful. I read them every week. But the fact is they don't pay a lot. And for women who really need to earn more, I wanted to enable them to access this amazing career opportunity. So that was like what drove me a lot.
Do you go into the business side of things, like how to build? A lot of courses, they won't just teach the skill, they'll also teach you how to build a business around that skill. You do that as well?
Yeah, so we have 2 segments of the program. The first segment is called the Confident Copywriter. That's like 65% of the program. And the last 2 months are the Profitable Freelancer. And that's all about learning how to build a profitable freelance business, managing clients, figuring out the money situation, admin stuff, how to actually generate leads, like what does it mean to market yourself. And when you sign up for my program, you don't have to take the Profitable Freelancer. Like if you know that you're not the kind of person who wants to freelance and you just want to get a position somewhere, you just want to learn the copywriting skills, you take just the first portion.
What would you say is the most important element when it comes to copywriting? In general, I guess. It's a very general question, so take it whichever direction you want.
We have to start with strategy. Who are you serving and what exactly are you offering them? What's your offer and who is your ideal client for that offer? Without that clarity, you're going to be all over the place and you can hire the best copywriter and you're still not going to get results. And it's also really important to note that copy doesn't solve fundamental business problems. Like if you have a product market mismatch, copy's not going to solve that. You have to change your offer or your audience. So once you have a proven offer with an audience that wants and needs that offer, then you can go ahead and invest in the messaging. So I guess that's like, to me, that's the starting point of really understanding who your audience is. Once you understand them, so then you want to figure out like, what are their pain points? What problem are you solving for them? And what words do they use to talk about that problem? Because those are the words you want to be using in your copy, like literally steal them from their mouth. So let's say for you, so what problem do your clients have? that they might come to you?
They don't know how to market themselves.
Okay. And why are they considering video?
Because they've heard that video is a very effective form of marketing.
Okay. And how do they talk about like video marketing? Do they say things like, I don't know where to start, or?
They say, the last guy messed me over and ran away with all my money. And we see, what you mean, like, what are their potential objections, or?
So that too, but let's go back to what you just said about the last guy ran away with my money.
Right.
So if a client said that to you, what I want to hear is like, what happened? What happened with the last guy? I want to hear them describe what the experience was with the last guy, so that you can directly create messaging that contrasts in your copy. So like, what's an example of like terrible video experience?
So not specific to video, but in general marketing, where a lot of people in my clientele range, they've been messed over at some point or the other in marketing, because a lot of marketing companies will come and approach different agencies or different firms that look like they could use the marketing, and they'll tell them, oh, we can get you this amount of clients guaranteed, which is it's in itself a red flag. And they'll buy into it. They'll be like, oh, I'll spend 30 grand and I'll make a whole lot more. And then they go ahead and do that. And then the company does pretty much nothing for them and then blames it on the client.
You weren't offering a good enough service.
Yeah, they'll say a whole host of things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And usually the firm will actually not be all the way up to par in terms of what they needed to do, and because maybe they weren't told exactly what to do, or maybe they hit a heavy whatever it is snag in their own system. But it's the company's, it's on the company's, it's their due diligence to make sure that their client is doing what needs to get done, and not just wait for the client to not do what they're supposed to do, and then go ahead and tell them, it's your fault.
Right. So this is such a massive opportunity, what you're describing here right now, because your chance to empathize with your client and acknowledge that you realize what they may have been through, and here's how you do things differently to ensure that doesn't happen. And you might even want to include messaging like, here's what I'm not going to do. I am not going to go ahead and promise you X amount of clients, because like we don't do that kind of thing. What we do is set you up for success, blah, blah, blah. And you could explain like how you set them up and make them poised to win that amount of clients. But I feel like that's such an opportunity to build trust by positioning yourself as like the anti-scammy video guys. Right.
It's also, I find it very, very helpful when you tell people what you don't do.
Right.
It makes it very, very clear to them. And also it separates you from all the people that won't tell you what they don't do, because they want you to feel like they're doing everything for them. Like, I will tell people off the bat in the first few minutes of the call, we are not running ads for you. That's not what we do. Like, we will make the video for you, but if you don't have any plan for how you're going to get people to see the video, don't hire us. You're going to be wasting your money. And the reason I say that is because for the reason I just said. In addition to that, also, if they don't see success from our video, it's going to reflect badly on us.
Right.
So I want to make sure that if someone's hiring us, they've thought it out. They thought it through and through, and they're going to, because it's happened to us before, where we made, in my opinion, an amazing video for the client, and the client's opinion as well. They loved the video, and they just did absolutely nothing with it. Yeah. And it hurts so much. I almost wanted to do another video for them, because when that video became outdated, I was so tempted to just make a free video for them so that they could have something to use.
Right.
And it killed me to see that it just fizzled out and disappeared, basically.
Yeah. So you want to work with people who are in the right position to benefit from the outcome you're offering.
Right.
Yeah. So I agree with you. Like, saying what you don't do is so powerful, builds a lot of trust. And also giving them, like, I feel like maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm not your target client, but I feel like the whole video making process is like a little bit of a mystery to people. Like, and you can have like video people who do things for like $2,000 or, like you said, $30,000. There's such a wide range, and like no one really understands what the difference is there. So by like providing more detail,
the range is even wider. You could have someone for like 500, and you could have someone for $100,000.
Wow.
And they could both be doing the same video, but
Right.
just, different process and different levels of quality control and service and all that.
So there's an example of a service industry where by providing like a sneak peek into your process and more details and clarity about how it works and what makes your videos different, you're setting yourself apart from everyone out there who just promises outcomes, but like everything that happens behind the black curtain is a mystery.
Right. So that's actually something that I'm working on now, and hopefully by the time this video comes out, I'll already have that in place. But outlining the process, like step by step, very detailed, what it's like working with us,
Mm-hmm.
and this way people can see it's not a mystery. They see exactly, you sign on with us,
Mm-hmm.
we set up a call with our marketing consultant, and we go into a deep dive into your business, and we write, we figure out exactly what it is, what's your USP, what's your offer, who your clientele, what's your voice, the whole thing, write a brief. Then we have, and just sort of people see that there's an approval at every step. Every step we get to approve it and before we move forward. And it would calm people down a lot. Exactly what you're saying.
I think it's amazing. And this kind of process that you're writing out, if you would design it in some pretty onboarding guide, like a PDF that you give to clients as soon as they sign, and then they have such clear expectations of like going in exactly what's going to be needed from them at each stage, that can completely transform the outcome for them because they set aside the time and the budget, let's say for ads or things like that. I think every service provider should be doing that. Like setting your client up for success by giving them clarity on what's going to happen. And if it's the kind of engagement that's going to require their time, how much time and at what point are they going to be, if they're going to have to review the video and give you feedback at a certain point. So when is that going to happen, and how much time does it typically take? So
also to outline in your service, to outline which parts, or if all of your services are done for you or done with you.
Right.
That's a very big thing that people don't necessarily clearly outlining. You don't know, like, how involved do I need to be? Because there are some clients that actually want to be doing it with you.
Right.
They want the done with you.
Right.
And there are some clients that are just like, I don't want to think about it. Just do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
So differentiating those levels. Clearly, we had this recently. Like, we're about to launch our next cohort of Copy Tribe, my signature training program, and we are considering putting out an offer this year that's not Copy Tribe. That's a completely digital, self-paced course. So no interaction, no community, no networking for the very, very motivated person who, right, the weirdo who doesn't need accountability, who is actually going to sit and watch all those videos. And so we were thinking what to call it, and I suggested calling it Copy Solo. Like literally in the name, making it very clear that if you choose this offer, you're going to be going solo. You're going to be doing it alone. You're not going to be getting the network value. You're going to be getting a much cheaper price. But so if you want the network and the community and the critique, you go with Copy Tribe. If you don't need that and you just want something far more affordable, you go with Copy Solo. Right. And I was thinking, like, that's really why I'm excited about this name, because I don't want to overpromise. I want it to be crystal clear what you're getting at each tier and let people decide for themselves.
Right, that's the key. In any service business, under-promise and over-deliver.
Right,
under-promise and over-deliver.
Thank you. That's an important correction.
Yeah, no, because I almost made that mistake as well.
Yeah.
I'm like under-promise and over-deliver. Yeah, it's important because at the end of the day, you want to create very low expectations.
Yeah.
But the challenge is, and this is something that I actually also struggle with, which is I try to create low expectations in the beginning so that I can wow them across the whole process. But the challenge is it sort of comes across a little bit red flaggy when you're creating these low expectations, and it's like, wait, and they want to hear something a little bit higher.
Right.
Do you experience that?
So this is where social proof can come in handy. Like, let other people talk about how it was to work with you. Instead of you being the one to promise and make these claims directly, let them describe the experience, describe the outcome, and let your client draw their own conclusions, but in your own copy to still stick to the under promise and over deliver.
Right. To be very clear what it is that you're not doing.
Yeah. And this is such a simple way for service providers to under promise. Anytime you give a deadline, just give yourself, add 4 more days to your deadline. And then deliver early. And it's like, wow. People are so pleasantly surprised when you deliver early. And it's just such a simple mindset.
And also, on what you just said, it gives you the breathing space in case something does go down.
Right.
You have more, like for our promo videos, for what we call our minute promo, our official timeline is 2 months. If we wanted to, we can create one of these videos in like a few days.
Right.
But we make it a few months so that, first of all, we have the bandwidth to do a lot more. Second of all, so that we can actually, if an urgent project comes up, we could still actually, get their project done in time. And third is so that we could have that, ability to be able to, we can afford to over deliver and deliver something, 3 weeks later and say, hey, we got it to you early. How's that? As opposed to like, imagine if I told someone it takes 2 weeks and then 3 weeks later I delivered it.
Right.
Versus I told them it takes 2 months and then suddenly 3 weeks later they have it in their hands.
It's super strategic. And even just from a framing perspective, like something that took 2 months to produce and like more iterations and times, it just feels a lot more valuable.
Right.
It's like that slow cooked meal versus what you throw in the microwave.
Exactly. That's the cholent.
Right.
It's like a crock pot cooks for like 3 days and then you feel the effects of it for the next 3 days.
Right.
And then
very powerful stuff.
How can a business use storytelling to really effectively put themselves forward?
So every business, or almost every business, has an origin story. How did you get started, right? You asked me about my origin story at the beginning of this conversation. And when you tell that story in a compelling way, it makes people feel that much more connected to you and your service. And it helps you stand out, right? Because stories are what stick in our brain when everything else is gone. Right? This is scientifically proven. Like we are wired to hear, to listen to focus on, and remember stories. So if you have any kind of origin story, and interesting, it doesn't even have to be something so dramatic, but like something that inspired you to start the service that you offer, or some kind of problem that you were looking to solve, or some kind of frustration you had with the industry norm that drove you to create what you created, that brand story should feature prominently in your messaging, ideally on your about page, or if you only have a one-page website, somewhere on that homepage. It's an opportunity for people to connect with you as a human. So I would definitely start with that. When it comes to, like, there's always going to be a client where like you try to take the origin story out of them, and you're like, so why did you found this business? Like, what inspired you to create this business? And he's like, I don't know. My brother-in-law was selling on Amazon, and I needed some money, and so like I decided I'll give it a try. And you're like, ooh, that doesn't give me much material to work with, I think if you look around, the most successful people are the people with fire. The people who had some kind of driving force, some kind of motivation that excites them, that makes them look forward to work, that they really enjoy what they do. Those are the people who are really successful. And that's who I prefer to work with, like not just the people who are in it for that bottom line.
Right. It's like when I was 3 years old, all my friends were playing with trucks. I was playing with cameras. Right.
I love that. That's great.
And my next door neighbor, his name was Steven Spielberg, I think. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh. And he said, Yaakov, one day you're going to be...
And he took me under his wing. He taught me everything he knows. So let's talk about call to action. How do you use calls to action in your web copy?
Okay, so there's two different kinds of marketing, and this is really important. Like, think about a law firm where the average engagement is, let's say, 100,000. We're talking about like B2B law firm, or even 50,000. Like, that's the average sell. So when I come to such a website, it would be very silly and jarring to have a big orange call to action in the hero section that says, book us now. It's a process. It's slow. The purpose of the website in that context is just to build trust and to warm people so that they pick up the phone and they call and they have conversation number one, and then a week later they'll have conversation number two, and it's just a much slower sales cycle.
Usually it would be like a book a free consultation.
Right. So like that would make sense as a call to action, but sometimes even that would be overkill. Like, it's more about just like showing up with a very trust-inspiring online presence. And you can have the phone number somewhere, but it doesn't have to be like glaringly obvious, because it's a much more of a like a relationship-driven industry. So I think that's very important. In general, when someone is very close to the sale, if someone's very warm and they already know you and they want what you're offering, that's where you want to make sure to have a very clear call to action. But higher up in the funnel, when people are still getting to know your brand and they're building that trust, you want to go a little softer so you don't avoid coming across as aggressive, overly pushy.
So let's say an example of a law firm. So let's say it's a B2B law firm, right? They do corporate law, or even a personal injury law firm where we're talking about big money, big decisions. What would you say should be the structure of their website and their call to action?
So let's say a personal injury law firm. So definitely the call to action there would be book a consult, or call us. One of those two. That's like that would be the next step after the website. That said, when structuring the website, you want to keep in mind that a lot of people are not going to call right then. They're going to check you out, and then a week later they're going to check out the website again, and then they're going to call friends and then check out the website one more time. So it's like a little bit more of like a messy process. And so the website can't just be about like, here's what we offer, here's what you can do next, but like, how exactly can you help me? Who have you helped before? What do they have to say about working with you? So after that hero section, you're going to want to have some immediate social proof, whether that's in the form of logos of companies that have worked with you, or like some really powerful testimonial from a well-known person. You're going to want to explain like the different kinds of services you offer and the process, if it's like a confusing process or an unclear process. And you also, very important, have to describe what makes you different. So a lot of people looking for lawyers or for dentists, they're comparing. So give me a reason to choose you.
Awesome. So if someone were to want to work with you, right? They were impressed with anything they heard or everything they heard in this conversation. What's the ideal way for people to find you? Where's your presence online?
So best way is my website, michaleisikowitz.com.
You're going to have to spell that for us.
But if you Google it, it'll come up pretty high. So Michaleisikowitz. I'm on a mission to convince my husband to shorten it to Isaac. But until then, it's Eisikowitz. And you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, Michal Eisikowitz profile. So connect with me there. And I'd love to connect.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Michal, for coming in. This has been amazing. I feel like we got a lot of value from this. And maybe we'll get you in again one day.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Take care.